This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. I lost my memory. I remember everyone except him. On the third day after waking up in the hospital, I met Rockey. Clearly a complete stranger, yet everyone told me I'd pursued him so passionately before, even as if my life depended on it. But I honestly didn't know him at all. They all said I got into the accident after hearing Rockey was getting engaged, rushing out impulsively. Hearing this explanation, I was bewildered, chewing on a lollipop, and asked, what does his engagement have to do with me? Relatives crowded around the hospital bed were asked to leave one by one. Finally, it was just me, my dear parents, and this stranger Rockey. I had heard his name quite a bit these past few days. From friends and family visiting me, they'd mention him in passing, then move on quickly. I was a bit curious who this person was, and why everyone seemed to know him, as if I was supposed to be very familiar with him. But no matter how hard I tried to remember, I couldn't recall who he was. Haley, do you really not remember your brother Rockey? My dear mother gently patted my head, asking with concern. Remember? The Rockey you grew up with, who you always liked. I shook my head, sincerely. He's very good looking, but I really have no impression of him. There's just a sense of total unfamiliarity, like someone I'd pass by on the street. Even if this stranger had a handsome face, he gave me no particular feeling. My mom's brows furrowed, then loosened, as she examined me closely, as if trying to see if I was faking it. But after staring at me for a long time, she couldn't find anything suspicious. So she simply patted my head, sighed, and mysteriously dragged my serious-looking dad out. Now, it was just me and Rockey left in the room. We looked at each other in awkward silence. Even the lollipop didn't taste as sweet. Being alone with a stranger in a room. What an awkward situation. So awkward, I didn't even feel like sucking on the candy anymore. Your injuries haven't fully healed yet, so it's best not to eat such sweet things. After a long, tense silence, Rockey finally spoke with a complicated expression. Oh, I responded, but I didn't take the candy out of my mouth. Instead, I averted my gaze and went from openly scrutinizing him to glancing at him secretly. Ha! I'm the eldest daughter of the Wynn family. Even my parents and all those elders who visited me never stopped me from eating candy. Yet here's this random man with a handsome face trying to tell me what to do. No way. I was starting to suspect I hadn't actually lost my memory at all. Maybe everyone mentioning Rockey around me was just to mislead me, to make me think about things, so I'd end up with someone to watch over me. They knew I had a weakness for good looks and found someone handsome. They must have thought they'd trick me with that, but no way. This theory made sense. Clearly, I, Haley, am clever and quick-witted, and I saw right through their tricks in no time. Following the script of a romance novel, the next step would probably be my parents coming up with an implausible explanation, telling me that I wasn't actually close with this Rockey, or maybe inventing him as my brother. Just as I was thinking that, Alice and Bame walked in one after the other. Haley, even though you don't remember your brother Rockey, he did grow up with you. You'll be discharged in 10 days, and he's holding his engagement ceremony then. You should still come to give your blessings. Alice said it just as I expected. I nodded, clapping in agreement. Mom's right. But Mom, I feel almost fully recovered. There's no need for me to stay in the hospital. Don't even think about it. You'll stay right here till 10 days are up. Alice's attitude shifted from gentle to stern in a heartbeat, turning from warm and kind to cold and firm in an instant. Oh. Resigned, I burrowed into my blanket. Freedom felt so far away. Oh. Those 10 days felt harder than prison. If not for my dear friend Serena coming by to visit, I might have died of boredom in the hospital. But Rockey is actually Serena's cousin. This genuinely shocked me, so I was wrong in my assumptions. They weren't lying to me? There's no way so many people would scheme to deceive you. When Serena found out about my absurd idea, she flicked my head. With a look of exasperation, how many romance novels have you even read? Me. You started dragging me into reading those, remember? Serena's face flushed as she helped me pack to leave the hospital, bickering with me. But as we bantered, she suddenly grew quiet and asked gently, Haley, are you really not sad about Rockey's engagement today? Are you just pretending, being strong in front of everyone, but crying in secret under the covers? As she said this, she moved closer, pretending to pry my eyes open to check. Who's the one reading too many romance novels here? Serena. I dodged her and firmly repeated, I'm not sad, not one bit. Don't you dare mess up my makeup. Serena rolled her eyes, who's as childish as you? But she relaxed, muttering, it's probably for the best if you don't remember. Otherwise, I might have had to go with you to crash the wedding. After some delay, when we finally arrived at Serena's, the engagement ceremony had already started. We slipped into the back row and watched the beautiful couple exchange rings. Applause erupted from the crowd, but the man on stage smiled, his gaze shifting restlessly as if he were searching for someone. "Do you think Rockey is looking for you?" Serena whispered, then gasped, covering her mouth. "Haley, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" Crying? Only then did I realize my vision was blurred, my face cold with tears that had already soaked my cheeks. Serena fumbled for a tissue, wiping my tears and muttering, "Haley, you said you weren't faking it." Dazed, I glanced at a figure in a distant corner. Grasping Serena's hand tightly, my voice choked. "Serena, tell me, does Rockey have a twin brother?" Saying that, I suddenly stood up, ignoring the startled onlookers, and dashed toward that corner. I'd forgotten someone very, very important to me. Everyone told me that person was Rockey. Even Rockey himself tried to prove it with his actions. But I didn't believe it. Because to me, Rockey was just a complete stranger. Just someone with a face I liked. A face that made me, even with all memories erased, cry uncontrollably, heartbroken when I saw him holding hands with someone else. Who did I forget? I couldn't remember. I remembered everyone else, but I couldn't recall that one person. When I chased into the corner, that shadow had disappeared. I stood there in a daze, looking around. No trace of that person was there, as if that shadow had never been. Serena hurriedly brought people to find me, and when she saw my tear-streaked face, she cried too, hugging me while sobbing. "Haley, maybe it's best if you just don't try to remember. Don't torment yourself anymore, okay?" The engagement ceremony ended, but the newly engaged couple stood in front of me like strangers. Rocky's eyes were red as he looked at me, full of regret. "Haley, I'm sorry, it was my fault. I never should have used this ceremony to deceive you. The engagement was fake. I wasn't actually going to marry." He spoke softly, his gaze filled with guilt, apologizing over and over again. The other person on stage also spoke up, explaining that the ceremony was meant to make me give up on Rockey. But standing there, Rockey realized he couldn't stop searching for me, that he couldn't let me go, and that seeing me indifferent in the hospital, as if we were strangers, made him realize I held a place in his heart. Is that how it is? I stood there, staring at the familiar faces before me. Is that really how it is? "Haley, stop thinking about it." Serena covered my eyes, her voice choked with tears. "Let's go home." I finally lowered my gaze and quietly replied, "Okay." It felt as though a farce had come to an end. Everything made perfect sense. But, no, there's no but. Serena took me home. We grew up together, close like siblings, even sharing clothes. Seeing her with reddened eyes, visibly sad, I didn't ask any questions. Following her lead, I returned to my room obediently, drank the hot water she handed me, and joked, "All right, you said you'd help me crash the wedding, just don't slow me down." Serena broke into a laugh, glancing at me cautiously. "Haley, did you remember everything?" "Remember what?" I asked casually, blinking at her. "About Rockey?" Seeing her visibly relax, I grinned and tugged on her ear. "Whether I remember or not, it's the same. Besides, since he's not getting married, there's no need to crash a wedding, right?" Serena, as if realizing something, laughed. "Well, Haley, looks like you've got some skill. Even a wooden block like Rockey is interested in you. I'm rooting for you." She smiled, though a flicker of sadness crossed her eyes. After a while of joking around, I claimed fatigue and changed clothes to lay down, pretending to be sleepy. "I'm really tired today. A little dizzy, too. I'm going to take a nap." She laughed and agreed, watching me close my eyes. She sat by the bed for a while, then slipped out quietly, completely unaware that her sleeping friend was stealthily following her. This naive woman still had zero sense of caution with me. She had no idea how well I knew her. Every time she lies, her hands tremble. She'd have no idea how much her hands were shaking when she told me those things. She looked like she had Parkinson's. Serena went to my mom's room. Hearing Serena say I was asleep, my mom, Alice, sighed in relief. Did she ask about anything? No. She just seemed to see something at Rocky's wedding. She started crying and asked if Rockey had a twin brother, Serena said, worry clear in her voice. "Alice, do you think Haley might suddenly remember?" "No," Alice replied firmly. "Even if she remembers something, she won't recall everything." "But, is your brother alright?" "My brother's situation is still bad," Serena replied, lowering her voice with concern. "No idea if it was him Haley saw today. His condition is so poor, yet he still came out." Serena and Alice spoke freely, not even bothering to close the door. But as I listened, I felt my blood heat up instantly. A brother. Absent-mindedly, I touched my ring finger. It felt as though something was missing there. but when I looked closely, my finger was bare, with no mark to indicate something had ever been there. Without listening to the rest, I quietly slipped away. As I was heading back upstairs, a maid appeared, surprised, "Miss." She was loud enough for the two in the other room to hear her. Quickly, I yawned and asked drowsily, what is it?" Then I licked my lips and asked, "Do we still have grape jelly at home? I suddenly feel like having some." The maid nodded. "Yes, ma'am knew you liked it, so she kept some around. But you haven't been home recently, so, miss, go back to your room. Walking barefoot, you don't want to catch a chill. I'll bring it up soon." I smiled and nodded, heading upstairs barefoot. On the way up, I heard faint conversation below. "Seems like she dreamed about something and asked for jelly." "No, just asked for jelly." The maid quickly brought it up, reminding me not to eat too much at once. I nodded obediently, watching her leave. Once she was gone, I locked the door and logged into my secret Facebook account. I'd never told anyone about this account, even Serena didn't know. Staring at the empty page, I typed in a string of numbers from memory. Fortunately, my memory, though missing a piece, was otherwise intact. The verification was approved quickly. "Jack, Haley, what's up?" "Jack, what's so urgent you're coming to me for?" I took a deep breath, fingers trembling slightly. "Jack, can you look up someone for me?" Jack replied. "Who?" "Serena's brother." "Huh?" Jack sounded puzzled. "Serena has a brother? Hold on, I'll check." Jack was a hacker I met a long time ago. He was young but skilled. He ran an internet cafe where I used to spend a lot of time and once got into some trouble that he helped settle. That's how we became friends, one of the few friends my family didn't know about. But why was I going to internet cafes back then? I can't remember. Setting my phone down, I hid my face in the blankets and rolled around on the bed a few times. Then, I opened my browser and searched for S Corporation. A headline popped up, "Secrets of the S Corporation." My heart skipped a beat as I clicked in. It was all about Serena's late-night meeting with a male model, complete with blurry photos as evidence. The photo was blurry, but still recognizable as me and Serena. Serena was the main subject, while I was in the background, caught unintentionally. Looking at the photo, I remembered that absurd scandal from that day. It happened on the birthday of someone Serena liked. I was with her to confess, and we ended up helping a male model hide from paparazzi. But on the way out, we were spotted by the guy Serena liked and got photographed by paparazzi. Thinking about it, I remembered Serena's devastated face from that day and couldn't help but laugh. But as I laughed, I noticed something strange in the photo. In it, I seemed to be leaning against someone's chest. My heart skipped a beat. Sliding my finger over the screen, I studied each photo carefully. In one, I finally noticed a pair of hands around my waist. In that photo, my face wasn't visible, but anyone who knew me would recognize it was me. The hands were tightly around my waist, possessive, and there was something like a ring on one of the fingers. Was it him? Swallowing hard, my mind went blank. Just then, a message popped up. It was from Jack. "Jack, got some info, but, Jack, just look at it yourself." Jack sent over a bunch of photos. I felt dazed, my finger hovering over the screen, hesitating to open them. What would I find? Was it what I thought it was? Have you ever dreamed of being a princess? Imagine that someone would rescue you and love you with all they had? Someone who would fight all obstacles to reach you. That someone who's really only a figment, a dream born from heavy pressures and loneliness. They're perfect, but they were never real. My name is Haley. I am the eldest daughter of the H family, surrounded by attention since I was a child. My life has been smooth and blessed, everything coming easily. I have nearly perfect parents, friends who have been with me since childhood, and an almost flawless appearance. I am confident and bold. I am deeply loved. And of course, what I am most proud of is having someone who, from birth, has always been by my side. His name is Rockey. Rockey is a child hidden away by Serena's family. He is absent from all media, even in graduation photos, he is nowhere to be seen. There is no information about Rockey, heir to the S Corporation, online. Only within the family circle do people know of Rockey's existence. But even among them, few have ever actually met him. This is because Rockey was born with a frail constitution. He was slower to grow, slower in everything compared to other children. Serena's family simply raised him with me, who was 1 year younger. Rockey has a very serious congenital heart condition. Only he and Serena's parents know this. Everyone else just knows that he's frail and can't be startled. I always thought Rockey was just physically weaker, but still like us. He would only disappear for a few days every month. I lived with Rockey for 16 years, and he became an irreplaceable part of my life. But one day, he began telling me how to live if he weren't there, how to love someone if he was gone. I was so angry that day, furious. Later, Rockey ordered a ring, apologized, and promised to never leave me. After many days, I forgave him and warned him never to say such strange things again. Rockey promised. He said he would never leave me. He was with me for 16 whole years. From the day I was born until I grew up. From my first word calling him mom to the moment I kissed his cheek in a flush. From my loudest cries to the day he placed my first ring on my finger. He was there for every major moment in my life. His few photos are all taken with me. His world is filled with me, and mine is filled with him. I can't imagine what it would be like to lose him. Losing him, my world would collapse. But Rockey, gentle Rockey, who promised to always be by my side, still left me. When I was 17, in the winter, Rockey disappeared. That winter felt colder than any other. No matter how hard I searched, I couldn't find him. I dragged Serena out of bed, crying, asking her why my Rockey was gone. But she couldn't answer me. She averted her gaze, wiping my tears and tugging at her blanket, saying she didn't know. No one knew. No one knew where Rockey went. I searched everywhere, asked everyone, but no one had seen him. That winter was unbearably cold, more so than I'd ever felt before, cold enough to freeze my blood. Winter passed, spring came, but Rockey did not return. As the seasons changed, I seemed to have gotten used to life without him. I took the college entrance exams and got into an excellent university. Rockey was gone, but it felt like he was still there, his presence everywhere. Some were hallucinations, others, I don't know if they were real. Then one day, I had a dream. In it, Rockey and I held hands, and he gently held me close, saying, "Haley, let's get engaged." But as soon as he said this, he began to disappear, bit by bit. I woke up and began searching for Rockey again, frantically, everywhere. But no matter where I looked, no matter how many places I went, I could not find him. They said I was going mad. Everyone looked at me with worried eyes. But I knew I wasn't mad. I just wanted to find my Rockey. I just wanted to find him. I stared at the screen, dense with text, my face soaked in cold tears. It took me a long time to wipe them away. Jack had messaged, apologizing, saying he couldn't find Serena's brother, but he had come across an old diary of mine. He said that maybe it held clues related to my search. Then there was a knock at the door. "Haley, are you awake? Why did you lock the door?" It was Serena's voice. I logged out of Facebook, put my phone away, got out of bed barefoot, and opened the door. Seeing me, Serena stepped back, then moved close again, asking quietly, "Are you okay?" Serena didn't used to be like this. She was never cautious, always so brash and lively. But now, around me, she is so cautious. "Serena, can you take me to the doctor?" Of course. She didn't refuse, wiping my tears and helping me to my bed, making sure I put on my shoes and dressed warmly, then taking me to the hospital. As we left, we ran into my mother. Alice's eyes were a little red, and she waved at me. I smiled back and waved to her too. "My dearest mother, I've forgotten someone I loved deeply. But this person intended for me to forget, because he was leaving me. He couldn't bear to see me collapse in despair, so he found a doctor to hypnotize me." Rockey returned. He's still the same, gentle and attentive. But now, I don't feel the need to cling to him anymore. I don't like holding his hand or cuddling up to him like I used to. Each time I ask, "Are you really Rockey?" he frowns, pats my head, and says, with that same smile, "Who else would I be?" Yes, if he isn't Rockey, who else could he be? One day, I overheard my parents talking through the door. They mentioned that Rockey recently returned to the South Wing, but his health remains poor, often falling into unconsciousness. That day, I ran so fast. I even forgot to watch for oncoming cars. And on the way to the South Wing, I was in a car accident. It was half a month before I woke up. But this time, I completely forgot about Rockey. I remembered everything else, but somehow, he had been fully erased from my life. I didn't remember Rockey. There was no hypnosis, just pure, simple forgetfulness. But when someone says, "Eat less sugar," I still feel a pang inside. And when I see a figure like him exchanging rings on stage, getting engaged to someone else, I can't help but cry. Our bodies remember what our minds choose to let go. Do you know where Rockey is? Serena shook her head. This time, she knew exactly who I was asking about, and there was no more pretense. My brother hid himself away. He didn't want you to witness his death. He had stayed alive as long as he could, because there was someone in this world he couldn't bear to leave behind. Someone named Haley. My brother knew you'd fall apart without him, but he didn't expect you to break down so completely. So, he created a new Rockey for you and used hypnosis, making you believe that Rockey was him all along. He could never let you go. To keep you from losing your mind, he was willing to erase himself, watching as someone else took his place in your life. He's so stubborn. I laughed softly. He always thinks he can plan everything perfectly. Serena, I'm going to get my memory back. You tell your brother he has to keep fighting, stay hopeful, wait for a heart transplant. Tell him there's someone named Haley waiting and waiting for him to return. Serena promised she would. I promised myself the same. Haley met Rockey again on her 20th birthday. The real Rockey, now shaved from treatments, looking thin and fragile. Even in this state, he smiled just as tenderly. Haley stood before him in his wheelchair, frozen for a long time. "Are you all right?" Rockey was the first to speak, looking at her helplessly. "Did you really have to force me to show up like this? Now you're not saying anything. Are you scared?" "No." Haley took a deep breath, choking up. "I'm just afraid you're another illusion. This time, it's real, Haley." I know. Please, don't speak anymore." Haley looked at his frail form, afraid he'd be carried off by the wind at any moment. She stopped him from speaking and began to talk on and on, her voice trembling. "The surgery's the day after tomorrow. My uncle's taken care of all the formalities. Be ready, don't be nervous. You must, absolutely must, make it through. I know you didn't want me to see you like this, but I couldn't stand it, Rockey. I couldn't bear seeing you only in dreams, in hallucinations. Rockey, I'm terrified. Promise me you'll make it through the surgery. You will, right?" Rockey nodded with a smile. He was so good. Haley didn't want him to speak, and he obeyed without saying a word, just quietly listening to her, fully attentive. "Rockey, I'll be waiting for you 3 months from now." Haley finally smiled, her first real smile since she'd seen him again. Her eyes sparkled with hope. "Next year, we'll get married." "All right," Rockey replied, gentle, as always. She understood all his tenderness, knowing he didn't want her to see his frail, ugly side. So, she'd give him all the time he needed to recover, to heal, and come back to her. "Then, I'll make sure to settle all our past accounts." On her 20th winter, Haley got to embrace the one she loved once again. Everyone gave them their blessings. This year, she shed too many tears, spent too many sleepless nights. Each anxious day, she prayed to the heavens to bring Rockey back to her. Thankfully, her wish came true. Serena/Epilogue. Serena has an older brother, frail since birth, yet remarkably resilient. Though 2 years her senior, he was in the same grade as her. When she was little, Serena would often ask her mom why her brother looked so sick, why he always needed hospital care, and why he was rarely in family photos. Each time, her mother would gently explain that her brother was a little angel sent by heaven, meant to be hidden from the world to keep him safe from harm. She would always tell Serena to protect her brother well. But Serena felt her brother didn't really need her protection because he had someone else, someone amazing, by his side. This person was beautiful, brave, and seemed to love him even more than Serena herself did. Her brother liked her, too. They were inseparable, as if destined to be together. When Serena was young, she'd even sulk to her mom, saying her brother only had eyes for Haley. But as she grew up, she became their biggest supporter. In her heart, Haley was already her sister-in-law. No one could be more perfect for her brother. This idea took root deep within her, and even when that new Rockey appeared, Serena's heart rejected it fiercely. But it was all her brother's plan. She had no choice, no right to interfere. She had seen her brother's breakdown and had witnessed him in the throes of illness. She was helpless. As a child, their family had tried to separate them, fearing their closeness might lead to trouble. It was the hardest time of Serena's young life. Her brother seemed to freeze over, and Haley fell silent. When the family finally relented, they regained their warmth and joy. Serena had seen so much. She had grown up under careful protection, cherished and loved, thanks to her brother. But seeing her best friend and beloved brother suffer this way, how could she ever be truly happy? Why is the world so cruel? Her brother, so good and gentle, why should he bear all this pain? Serena couldn't understand, and she dared not blame the heavens, fearful that any slight might. Yet, after all her prayers and their efforts, her brother finally found hope. Those days of surgery had been so hard, a constant ache in her heart, perhaps some kind of sibling bond. But everything turned out well. Seeing Haley and Rockey's engagement, Serena felt like the happiest person alive. She almost wanted to twirl across the stage, but instead, she slunk away, crying her eyes out, worried some paparazzi might catch her in a vulnerable moment. While hiding, she accidentally stepped on someone's foot. Apologizing frantically, she raised her face to find a handsome man with a casual charm looking back at her. "Miss Serena," he said, grinning, "nice to meet you. I'm Jack." Jack. Serena lowered her hands from her tear-streaked face, staring in shock at the charming man before her. You're Jack?" "Yes, Miss Serena. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Jack straightened his posture and extended his hand. Serena, still trying to hide her tear-streaked face, reached out to shake his hand. "It's nice to meet you." This was their first meeting in person, though they had become fast friends online long before. Little did she know, this wasn't Jack's first time seeing her. He had known this straightforward, trusting Miss Serena for quite some time. Only back then, he hadn't yet earned the right to stand by her side. The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.